Hello, good morning, and welcome to the Battle of Bunker Hill. Chapter 18. Here we go. It's a War of the Hills. So this is a probably the first battle of the Revolution. I mean, I guess Lexington Concord is first, but this is the first real big one. And the British won it, but it was all in their newspapers. They would never win a battle like this again. The Americans killed more of them. They just kept shooting at them. And they would have won, but they ran out of ammunition. And General Howe figured that. That's why he sent the last attack. Now, I know this is a little weird because I've always considered this my favorite battle. When I was a kid, I learned everything about it. And a lot of the stuff I know, I actually knew when I was your age. It's also a little embarrassing to say, oh, it's my favorite battle. Over almost 2,000 people died. Awesome. Yeah, that's not cool. It's not cool. Real people died, so it's kind of weird to call it your favorite battle. But nonetheless, I meant it respectfully. But sadly, this is the deadliest battle in the American Revolution. Chapter 18, The War of the Hills. England's Major John Pitcairn to the Earl of Sandwich, Boston, March 4th, 1775. I am satisfied that one active campaign, smart action, and a burning 2 or 3 of their towns will set everything to rights. Nothing now, I am afraid, but this will ever convince those foolish, bad people that England is in earnest. Now, this Major Pitcairn was there at the Battle of Lexington. He kind of helped start that war. Interesting. And he's saying, these Americans in Boston, they're not going to learn their lesson until we fight them, burn a couple of their towns to the ground. Maybe then they'll listen. Wow. Yeah, they were sent over to protect us, I thought. Burning towns? Really? And so there was war. It seemed to begin almost by itself. Some people on both sides wanted to fight, and that was enough. 2 days after the Second Continental Congress appointed George Washington commander-in-chief of the Continental Army, before anyone in Boston even knew there was a general, redcoats and patriots were killing each other. They were fighting the first major battle of the Revolutionary War. So Washington was picked to command them, but even as he was heading up, remember, we're not talking cars and planes here and trains. It took several days or a week to get up there. Wasn't in time. The battle had already happened, and without a general. Two hills, Breeds and Bunker, lie just across the Charles River from Boston. Like Boston itself, they are on a peninsula connected to the mainland by a narrow neck, the Charlestown Peninsula. The British were asleep on that June night in 1775 when the Massachusetts soldiers began to dig fortifications on Breed's Hill. The Americans worked all night. They must have worked with great speed and ability, because by morning it was done. Those hills that looked out on Boston were filled with troops and trenches. The British couldn't believe it. For months they had tried to get the colonists to work for them. They needed barracks and there were other construction jobs to be done, but nothing got finished. Americans are lazy, the British thought. And then they saw this amazing feat, accomplished overnight. Breed's Hill was swarming with men and covered with impressive earthworks. Bunker Hill was dark with men. The British, especially the 4 British generals in Boston, were dumbfounded. So, 3 British generals were sent to help General Gage. Howe, General Clinton, and General Burgoyne. These were all famous. They all become famous generals in the American Revolution. And they were going to take over for General Gage. Howe was the one in charge, General Howe. And look, the Americans weren't working on purpose. They didn't like the British, so they didn't work hard. But when the Americans wanted to, they built a quick little fort overnight. They were supposed to build it on Bunker Hill, which was set higher but a little further back. Instead, it was built on Breed's Hill, which is closer to the water. And really, I think it was Isaac Putnam right now who built it on purpose to be more threatening and to start the war. He was told to build it on Bunker, which might not have started it. But because the forts were so close to the water, they could shoot on British ships, and Britain had to do something about it. They weren't going to let them stay there. They started firing cannons right away. And the Americans at first ignored it until one of the people got their head blown off by a cannonball. They were even trying to, now this is a little weird, they were trying to catch the cannonballs because they kind of go slower at the end. Yet not a good idea. Your hand will fall off if you touch the thing because it's too heavy and fast. So do not, if you ever see a flying cannonball, don't try to stop it rolling because you will die. You'll lose a hand. They finally figured out to let them stop and then pick them up. All right. That's a little nice lesson. And believe it or not, Boston learned it the hard way. A lot of dumb patriots, I guess. If they had thought a minute, they might have sent troops to capture the neck of Charlestown Peninsula and perhaps trap the colonial soldiers. But they didn't think. They reacted. Kind of like the king. Their pride got in the way. How dare they build a fort? Before long, barges filled with English soldiers were splashing their way from Boston across the Charles River to Charlestown. Fifes played, drums pounded, and cannon blasted. It took them way too long to get ready. That allowed the Boston to really dig in. The British should have been quicker. The British troops made ready to attack head on. The Massachusetts men dug in at the top of the hill. Must have been scared, really scared. They had no training for this. They were fighting Europe's best soldiers, and they had very little gunpowder. They knew they had to use that gunpowder carefully. They had few bayonets. The British soldiers all had bayonets. Bayonets are like knives that go on top of your sword that turn it into a spear. So in hand-to-hand combat, bayonets are pretty brutal. The American officers told the volunteer soldiers to wait until the British soldiers were almost on top of them before they fired. Wait until you see the whites of their eyes, they said. Yeah, that's very famous at Bunker Hill. Wait until you see the whites of their eyes to fire. So that meant you didn't shoot at them until they were very close. And that is what the Massachusetts men did. Can you imagine the strain? It is said that those who saw the Battle of Bunker Hill never forgot the sounds, the smells, the ferocity, the fear of that day. Pretend you were up there with them on the top of Breed's Hill. Watch the redcoats advance toward you, bayonets pointed. Don't panic. Don't fire until you hear the order to do so. Yeah, so this is a big deal. When they got close, they fired and ripped them apart. So many people died and dropped. It is ridiculous. And they aimed at a lot of officers. A lot of officers die in this battle. It's the British. Yeah, this was a bad battle. It was eerie, they say. All those soldiers climbing and no one firing. Then all at once, the hill seemed to explode. Bullets tore through the redcoats and left the ground covered with bodies and blood. The British would not consider retreat or a defeat. They landed more troops. And again, the American fighters held their fire until it could hurt them most. The English soldiers kept coming and falling until some had only 8 or 9 men a company left. Some only 3, 4, or 5. So they really wiped out whole companies of 100 men. So it was pretty bad. They attacked 3 times. Finally, on the 3rd time, they took off their red coats because it was way too hot. It was the hottest day of the year that time. It was late June, I believe. And they took one more attack, and then they kept going, and the Patriots didn't have any ammunition left or bullets, and they won and started killing everyone in the fort. Now, the Patriots did retreat onto Breed's Hill and fought there, too. So a lot of people go like, well, the Battle of Bunker Hill was really fought on Breed's Hill. And they're right, most of it was. But some of the battle actually was fought on Bunker Hill, too. Suddenly it was quiet. This time the British made it to the top of the hill. The Americans were gone. They had run out of gunpowder. The British captured Breed's Hill and Bunker Hill, too. But what a price for two unimportant hills. More than 1,000 British soldiers were killed or wounded that day. The Americans lost 441 men. Dr. Joseph Warren was one of those who died. He was a leader of the Boston Patriots. They say he was cool and brave under fire, and that he impressed those who were around him. The same kinds of things are said of the handsome Major John Pitcairn, who fought for the Royal British Marines at Bunker Hill and didn't live to tell of it. Dr. Joseph Warren is known as the martyr of Bunker Hill. What's really cool about him is he was elected general because he was so important, but he was a doctor. He didn't know how to fight, though I found out he was starting to read books on it. But when he got there, he purposefully went to the scene where he knew was going to be the most fighting. And he said to the colonel there, even though he was a general, the colonel said, "You're in command, Colonel Prescott." And he said, "Nope, I'm going to shoot guns with the privates. You're in command. Don't worry about it." That's pretty impressive, pretty heroic. And I've since learned his dad had kind of encouraged that thing while he was alive, to make sure you fight as a soldier, to gain the confidence of men. So he did kind of want to prove himself. But it's sad because he was really a smart guy, doctor. He should have been around for the Declaration of Independence and all that stuff, and instead he was killed. He would have been a great leader in America. But instead he ended up fighting and dying. So a big hero there. Something to think about. And last thing, so they got these two hills, and they did that because the British wanted to keep expanding and get out of Boston because they were kind of trapped there. But because they got so many people killed, they couldn't go anywhere. So even though they won the two hills, they really lost. They wanted to get out of Boston and move into the Massachusetts. They couldn't. They had so many men killed for just one hill. They were like, all right, yeah, we gotta, we're done. So that was pretty weird that they said that at first the British won battles. Not quite. After this battle, however, it goes downhill for the Patriots. They don't do a lot of winning after the Bunker Hill, except for South Carolina. They won a big battle, and that was it. Then they started losing, kind of like the Patriots this year. Oh, goodness. Did I just say that? That's so mean. All right, well, this is kind of one of the last classes we have before the holidays. So, happy holidays. I think I'll see you for 2 more days. I better. All right, bye.